Good. Well, hello and welcome to this webinar. My name is Susan Hallam, and I'm going to be talking to you tonight about your social media strategy, in particular, starting afresh with a view to using this opportunity to build our social following and to look at new ways of working with our customers and building these kind of relationships. It's nice to see you all. We have a nice group here tonight. And what I'd like to do is to say over the course of the next 40 minutes, what I'd like to be doing is sharing with you some ideas, some of the things that I've been thinking about that have changed over the course of these last few weeks and what interesting times we're living in. So I'm going to go back now to sharing my screen with you in terms of going through the presentation. And again, just in terms of housekeeping for tonight, I will be taking questions during the course of this session, probably saving them up towards the end. But if you were to open your chat window, there will be a Q&A, and I'll be happy to take questions as we go. The other thing I wanted to remind you is that we are recording this webinar, and we will be emailing you a link to the webinar so that you can take a look at this, look at it a little bit later as well. Now, as we think about what's happening with the pandemic, one of the questions that, of course, absolutely nobody knows is how are we going to be exiting the pandemic? And from what I'm seeing at the moment, that we were once upon a time talking about a V-shaped recovery, that there would be a swift descent and a swift recovery, or it might have turned into a U-shaped recovery. And I think what we're all, perhaps, I don't know if you would agree with me, but my personal point of view is that perhaps we're looking at something called the recumbent L, which means there has been a swift decline for all of our businesses, and it is going to be a longer recovery, a longer, slower recovery out of what we're experiencing. And you'll also see in the graph that there are going to be, there are going to be dips along the way. So there could be things happening that it might not be a steady return. So what we want to be thinking about with our social media marketing is what are we going to be doing over this longer period in terms of the campaigns that we want to be looking at. Now, as we're looking at the first question, the first poll that I sent through to you all is I wanted to take a look in terms of how it's affecting your business. And I thought it might be interesting then to be thinking a little bit about different ways that you can communicate depending on on your social media, depending on how your business is being affected. So right off the bat, for those of you whose businesses are directly harmed, that you are in true lockdown, that you're not trading, that you're in big, that perhaps that you have furloughed your employees, that you are, I hope, taking advantage of the various government grants that are available to you. When we think about our social media marketing, what we might want to do is put together a series of messaging that fundamentally underpins the fact that what we need to be doing as a business is laying low. And we need to be encouraging other people to be doing the same thing. So essentially what they're doing is if there are messages here like hotels.com where where they are doing very effective messaging saying, we are social distancing and we hope that you are too. If you notice the time out social messaging has totally shifted theirs from instead of going out, that it's entirely about staying in. So what we want to be thinking about right now, and I'm going to be talking to you in more detail over the course of the next 40 minutes or so, is if your business has been directly harmed, what you want to be thinking about right now is continuing to build brand awareness. So people still know that you exist, you're still looking to come back. So you want to be putting messaging out. And what we want to be doing is thinking about planning for the future. But your message for right now has to be consistently to lay low and urge other people to be doing the same. Now, the second of the options that I gave you was whether or not that you had been indirectly harmed. So a lot of these would be businesses that here's a bakery, the Ugly Bread Bakery, that's based here in Nottingham City Centre. And I think one of your strategies for your social media communications, if you have been indirectly harmed, is about being generous. So what we want to be doing is to showing we have empathy, that we have relationships with the community, and that while our business may not be trading to the same level it was previously, we are still in a position that we are able to help others. So there is a big campaign taking place in Nottingham. I'm sure they're happening everywhere that you are. There are campaigns, one of them is called Open Kitchens, that they are looking to get people to restaurants to be volunteering to open their kitchens, and businesses like mine to donate money. For £1.85 a meal, they're providing meals to the NHS. They're providing meals to people who are in need. So what we want to be thinking about in terms of your social messaging is, what kind of generosity are you demonstrating in terms of your giving? It doesn't have to necessarily be financial giving. Are you being generous to your staff? Are you giving generous of your emotional energies? But if your business has been indirectly harmed, I would suggest this would be a really good strategy for you to be taking. Now, the third sector, there are about a quarter of you in the audience today that in some respects that your business has indeed benefited from the pandemic. Now, this is a very difficult marketing position to be in. So once again, I would suggest that your thinking at the moment, particularly at the moment, is very much about generosity. And again, about giving. So I do know that in Nottingham that we've seen a real a flourishing of home delivery services for farm goods. And we're seeing organic produce, farm goods, all kinds of farm shops are now have pivoted their business. They are now moving into delivery services. I'm aware of microbreweries who are making very good business in terms of home delivery services. So I'm sure many of you might be in this position that if you were taking advantage of home delivery, you could be benefiting. Now, what we need to be thinking about is, while that is great, and I would congratulate you if you are able to take advantage of this opportunity, what we also now need to do is to be aligning our social messaging still to be very much around the generosity messaging. So here's a good campaign that's running, that we're saying, if you were to buy a jar of our product, then we will also then donate a jar in return. So what you might want to be thinking about is, how do you share your success in a way that you are donating generously. And then the fourth of the statuses is that you might be indirectly impacted. So some of you may provide, in addition, in your farm shop, you may provide other services. I don't know whether you have wellness things or yoga type things or other kind of things that might be going on that you're videoing. What you might want to do, again, is think about your social messaging in terms of empathy and compassion and generosity. So what we might want to be thinking about is, are you available to make offers for free? Things that you might ordinarily have charged for. So what you're finding is people are creating little videos sharing how to cook. If you're going to get a box of goods which has produce in it, perhaps that you're not familiar with, here are things that you can be using. I am sure you have seen the campaigns going on that they're talking about how to use up stale bread and how to use up leftover ingredients. So you might want to be then sharing this, that you understand that people are locked in. You do feel for them, that you are that they are at home with their children looking after these things. But what you might want to do is to be aligning your thinking specifically along the empathy and generosity kind of line of thinking. You'll hear that theme pretty much consistently through my presentation. Now, as we take a look at this, what we want to also then do is to be, this idea of empathy and generosity arises from the fact that we need to be keeping a close eye on what our consumers, what our customers are actually thinking. And I have found some nice fresh data that I'd like to share with you. And this is coming from an organization called Statista. This data comes from the 22nd of April. So this data is just a week old. And what they did is they interviewed people in terms of who, if they did have concerns about the pandemic, what fundamentally are they worried about? And we can see here we have data from China, Germany, the United Kingdom, as well as the United States. And what I wanted to point out in terms of the United Kingdom is that the top issue, as you would expect, would be health, and would also be economic stability. But if you go down the list, there's also things that are still remaining. 28% of the population is still concerned about food shortages and availability. They're looking at the idea in terms of our physical health and wellness. So you might want to be aligning your messaging in terms of wellness and health, because these are still, as you would expect, but here's the evidence that underpins it. These are still huge, huge concerns for the general public. And what we might also want to think about is what their priorities are in terms of the pandemic. And what this question was asked is how strongly do you agree with the following sentiments in terms of, I will do everything I can do to protect me and my family, which is 65%. But the main thing are the two second ones I wanted to share on the list that has to come back to these ideas of compassion and empathy. It is important that people take more care of each other now. 65% of the population thinks we need to be taking care of each other. So again, if you're looking to be aligning your messaging with the sentiments of what people are thinking, these could be great messages about taking care of each other. And the third one is very much along the same lines. I'm in favor of strict policy if it helps to protect the vulnerable. And 66% are still want to be taking care of the vulnerable. So again, I think you know this, you probably feel this way personally in your own heart of hearts. But what we could then be doing is thinking, how then do we deliberately align these messages with our own social media messages coming from our businesses. So as we're talking about defining our social voice, we have a number of different options of the kinds of things that we can be taking a look at. And in terms of our voice, I wanted to share with you some data that I received from Google just earlier this week. And they, again, are coming along with this in terms of social messaging and empathy. It's also about helpfulness. And again, I think this would be another pillar in your stool of if we think of the three strands of your social media communications in terms of empathy and helpfulness. What we might want to do is the first point is keep in mind that your customer base is changing. Their needs are changing, their requirements are changing, and to be honest, what they're expecting from you is changing. But more importantly, it's changing now, and it's going to be changing into the future as well. So what we want to be thinking about in terms of that helpfulness is keep in mind, what do they need to know right now? So it might have to do with more detailed information, more current information in terms of availability and in terms of what's going on. And you might want to be rethinking your offerings and your propositions in terms of making them more helpful and making them more detailed in terms of what people need right now. Now, the second thing on the list, I think, is also an important strategy for you to be thinking about with your social media strategy, that this is a great opportunity for you to be forging new communities, for you to be spreading your network of people who know about your business. And the best way to do this would be for you to create connections between your own customers, so that they then can spread the word out to their network as well. So what we want to be thinking about is in terms of your social media community of people that are your followers, your connections, people who are engaging with your content, what can we do to be encouraging them to connect with other users? And what we might want to be doing is aligning yourself with your social media following who are creating content in their own right. So what we could be then doing is finding out who are the leaders in your community and ensure that you are engaging with them, providing them with assets, providing them with offers, maybe offering them these kind of good messages that they can be sharing as well on your behalf. And the third thing that we want to be thinking about, and I'm sure that you're doing this already, but you cannot take your foot off the pedal, is that we are now operating in a 24/7 environment. I know that this is happening during the pandemic, but I think you're going to find that this change is going to stick. This is a change. There's going to be structural changes in terms of how society is using these new technologies, how many of us may continue to work from home in the future, how many of us may continue to use these new technologies like Zoom, like we are today. these changes are going to be sticking. So what we need to be thinking about is, how can you be available online when your target market is also online? So again, many of us are operating in a traditional retail working hours, and you may need to be thinking about adjusting your strategy to be available more readily for when your customers want to communicate with you. Now, as we think of, okay, so we thought a little bit about our customers, what they are worried about, what their concerns are, what their priorities are. We've thought a little bit about how you might need to be shifting your strategy to be available for them, to be building your communities, to be available for when they need you. So what I now would like to do is to shift gears again, and I'd like to talk to you about different kinds of content that you can be creating with your social media, some specific practical examples of things that you can be creating with your social media. Now, my guess would be is that many of you are probably already doing lots of really good things, so that you're probably already sharing recipes and you're organizing cook-alongs. So we could be doing something that you watch while I cook something and we interact. You might already be, I hope, perhaps be running competitions or offering giveaways. You might perhaps be focusing on lovely stories of your customers who are already self-isolating. I've seen beautiful photographs where people have received boxes of food or have bought boxes of food and taken the boxes home, and they have pictures of them with their children or their dog just enjoying it. So what you might want to be thinking is telling stories of your customers who are self-isolating, but who still want to connect to the community, and more importantly, feel connected to you as one of their suppliers in terms of that relationship. And then, of course, we do know that we have holidays. We had Easter has passed. We have a May bank holiday coming up. So again, these are traditional things I hope that you already have in your social media arsenal. So these things, I would argue, are not particularly new and innovative for you, but this is a good checklist for you to go back and revisit this. So you might want to be putting these into your social media schedule. Now, what might be a little bit different that you might want to be thinking about is we do know that your customers are still looking for reassurance. So you might want to be scheduling a series of reassurance messages. Now, this may feel common sense to you, that you do have hand washing in place, or that you are doing contactless delivery, or that your staff are being well looked after, or that the welfare of your animals, or that your property is still being taken care of. But I think what you need to be doing is framing your social conversations in the context of reassurance. And again, it may be that you need to be looking at your plan for the period leading up till, say, the end of June at this point. What are these continual reassurance type messages that you can be continuing to give out, perhaps as the lockdown starts to ease, the kind of changes that might be taking place, things that you are doing, looking after the welfare of your people, your staff, looking after the welfare of your customers. You might want to put that into your checklist. We're looking at reassurance, and then we might also want to be thinking much more specifically about educational content. We have millions of people who are locked in at home. They are looking at the four walls, and there is a huge surge of people learning new things, learning how to do things, doing research. I don't know about you, but my husband has never read so many books. I have never cooked such a variety of things. So what we want to be doing is thinking about what can you be generating as educational content. This might be insights about how your operation works, insights that you know about your products that people like me perhaps did not know about. We might want to be looking at content that you could be creating specifically for the homeschooling market. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the key stages, key stage 1, key stage 2, but could you be creating content that talks about how things grow and here's spring and this is what it looks like? So we have reassurance, we have educational content, and what we might also want to be doing is aligning our businesses with genuine, purposeful, positive causes. So thinking about our target market of millennials and Generation Z, these guys are hyper connected and they are very interested in these good causes. For example, here in the city of Nottingham, we did recently have just yesterday, had an auction for the Robin Hood Fund. And this was money to be raised for citizens of the city who have suffered because of the pandemic. Is there any way that your business can be aligning with these good, purposeful causes? It's going to make you feel good. Your customers are going to love it. It's a great way to build these relationships. Perhaps one of the things that you might want to consider is even asking your community, what kind of causes perhaps could you also be supporting? Now, again, I know most of us are in a position that we need to be conserving cash, but there will be other ways that you can be giving your support as well. So that gives us 3 types of content. What I also wanted to do is to remind you to be aligning your brand with the similar values that resonate with your target market. So again, for many, we all have a choice as to where we can spend our money. So what we need to do is to make sure that people want to spend their money with you, and they want to spend it with you for specific reasons. There will be reasons that aligns me with wanting to buy from you. Now, what's really important as well is you may find, I hope some of you may be finding as well, that as time goes by, you will actually be winning new customers. So what we now need to be doing is thinking in our social media that we want to be reinforcing these messages about the kind of values you have that are really important to me as well. And these could be really good old-fashioned values like family and helpfulness and local. There'll be all of these kind of good messages. And again, do you need to deliberately weave these values-based messages into your social media marketing messaging? It goes without saying that now's not the time that you should be sending out hardcore sales messages. Have you noticed that? I've not mentioned sales messages particularly at this point. The last one that I wanted to mention to you is probably my personal favorite, and I think the one that is the most important of all. And this is going to be to partnership with authentic, everyday influencers. I think I mentioned this to you before, that fundamentally, it's not what you say about yourself that's important. It's what other people say about you that's important. So what we want to be thinking is, how can we get a wider array of our customers talking about us? Do we want to be giving them reviews? Do we want them to be generating content about us? Do we want to be getting recommendations? And by the way, everyday recommendations and referrals, do we want to be thinking in terms of everyday influencers? These are people like friends and family, but I don't, from people like me, my real everyday influencers are also my neighbors. So there are Facebook groups of my neighborhood, and we talk about each other in terms of who's taking delivery and who's buying what and where are we getting our goods from, what kind of things are going on. How do you get involved with this kind of set of everyday influencers? Because this is the antidote to skepticism. It's not you saying how wonderful you are, it's other people saying just how wonderful you are. Now, I know a bunch of us in this webinar today, our businesses have been really hit hard by the pandemic. So what we're doing is also, in terms of building these relationships, this is preparing us for the exit. This is preparing us for when things will then start to get that gradual curve back to normal. So there is work that you need to be doing right now in preparation for the exit. Now, as we think about that, fundamentally, what we need to do is throw away your 2020 social media plan. So probably many of the things that you were expecting to do in terms of social distancing, in terms of businesses being closed, in terms of all these kind of plans that you may have had, many of these things need to go out the window. So we need to be perhaps starting from scratch and creating a brand new social media plan. And what I'd like to do is share with you 4 things that I'd like you to do with your planning. And all of this comes under the umbrella known as being an agile marketer. I hope you like the picture, by the way. The idea of agile marketing is that we are operating in a really uncertain environment. We're operating in a rapidly changing environment. The business models are changing. Consumer trends are changing. We all need to be conserving cash. So what we need to be doing is being more agile with our social media so that we are being more responsive to these changes. We're testing new things. We're going to be trying to see what works. Now, in terms of agile marketing, the first recommendation that I'd like you to do in terms of changing your mindset, and this isn't, by the way, just about your social media. This really has to do with all of your marketing and actually all of your business planning. The first thing is experimentation is the new planning. So what that means is we have no idea what's going to be happening in July. We have absolutely no idea what's going to be happening in September. So what we need to do is to create a new mindset to be open to whatever these possibilities are going to be looking like. So previously, whereas you would have determined your marketing plan, what we now need to do is rather than having this deliberate predetermined plan, we need to be open to an emergent strategy that we are going to be experimenting and testing. Now, these experiments can take a number of different forms. So what we now need to be doing is we're going to be testing and trying new things. So this could be, for example, experimenting with new forms of content. I do know a lot of you are experimenting with creating more videos, that you are running webinars like you're attending here today. I know some of you are creating new offers. Some of you are generating new content for your website. Some of you are writing more blog posts. Some of you are sharing even more an innovative type of images. We could even get more sophisticated, and some of you may be trying A/B split testing. There's a free service on your website that you can use called Google Optimize. And Google Optimize means you can create 2 versions of your homepage, and Google will test them and we'll see which one gets a higher conversion, which one gets a better result for you. Now, again, we could talk about lots of different experiments that you could play with. Now is the time for you to be experimenting. And it's simply because we really have, we just are not operating in a world of certainty at the moment. The second of the 4 things I wanted to mention to you is you want to start big by betting small. What that means is now is not the time to be starting great big marketing campaigns. Now is not the time to be launching big initiatives. Now is the time for us to be starting with smaller gambles, if that makes sense. Professional gamblers know that they will make many small bets before they then make the big bet. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to be thinking about small bets that you can make to see what's going to be delivering results. What might these small bets be? Well, perhaps you might want to try some social media advertising. So for example, I'll tell you personally, we ran today a social media campaign on a platform called LinkedIn. But essentially what we did is we reached out and targeted the specific customers that we wanted to gain. And we got 7 new leads at a cost of £3 each. There are low cost ways that you can be using social media advertising to test it out, to try by betting small. So you could put a relatively small budget and try that advertising. You might, starting small, have you guys all emailed your clients lately? Have you been in touch with them and offered them something new, something different, a new product, a new service? These are small steps that you can take. Have any of you been involved in lead nurturing, which means if you've had a new customer, have you then gone back to them to follow up with another offer or let them know about something that you're doing that's corporate, socially responsible? Have any of you thought about different kinds of ways of doing market research? So are you even surveying your customers at this point to ask them, what are they interested in? Have you thought about running polls or questionnaires? And there are tools, low-cost tools that can help you to do this so that you can listen to what your customers are feeling right now. So now is a good time for you to put on your thinking cap and start thinking about these small marketing campaigns that will not be giving you huge risk. We might also want to say that when you're trying these new things, another thing that I have great personal difficulty with is striving for progress, not perfection. And fundamentally what that means is that we need just to get the job done. It doesn't have to be perfect, these experiments, but we do need to be taking action. And in particular, as we're striving for progress, are you aware of the cost of delay? So if you're trying to get things perfect, day by day, tick tock, you are missing the opportunity. So do you, at what point do you trade off that absolute perfection for speed of delivery and pace? Do you want to be thinking about setting deadlines and focusing on getting time to market? For some of us, we only have small windows to offer these propositions or products or services. So do you need to focus on that time to market? I guess the other thing to be thinking a little bit about would be is in terms of striving for progress, do you need to be working in partnership with people who can help you, teach you how to do stuff more quickly? So you do belong to networks, you do know other businesses, there are other business associations, there is a lot of training out there available for you. You could pay consultants like us to help you, but do you need to work in partnership to make the progress? So I think speed is something that you might want to also be thinking about. And then the last thing is we're thinking about agile marketing is staying close to your data. Now it's interesting with the data because if you're doing, for example, I mentioned earlier that one little test you could do would be some social media advertising. There is a lot of data in there that you can understand how your users are behaving, what they're engaging with. Did you know that you're watching this Zoom webinar right now? And for those of you who are online watching this live, this is a recording. Some of you will be watching a recording, but some of you are watching live. Are you aware I'm able to measure how many minutes of the webinar you watched? And I know, so there's a huge amount of data there that I can see who of you are more engaged, who of you are less engaged. We could take a look at what kind of posts are we putting on social media that are getting higher levels of engagement. Really, successful social media and digital marketing more generally is very much about that kind of precision. It's about measuring how persuasive your content really is. Excellent. Well, I hope that's given you a few thoughts. And I think what I'd like then to do is just rattle through one more time 5 little things that I'd like you to do when you leave here today. So if I were to give you, I think actually I only might have 4 tips, but I think I'm supposed to give you 5. We'll see. So the first message is, and I know you know this already, focus on your customers, not on yourself. Focus less on you, focus more on them. What we want to be doing is thinking about generosity, we're thinking about helpfulness, we're thinking about kindness. What we want to be focusing on, what are other people saying about you? We want to be sending out messages about how what you're doing is benefiting the wider community. We want to be building relationships and empathy. Now is not the time to be selling. You want to be focusing on your customers and your community and your family and your staff not on your business. The second of the tips is please take the time right now to think about investing in your marketing. Now is the time to invest. What we want to be doing is preparing ourselves that when we start to come out of this curve, that you are able to jump on it. So do you need to be considering making updates to your website? I think all of us always have a wish list of things that need to get done. Now could be a good time to be looking at creating content, writing stories, updating your photographs, updating your website. Consider advertising. And again, I think some of you might seriously want to be thinking about advertising on YouTube, because I'm sure you're aware, I suspect all of you are consuming so much more digital content at the moment. Is it worth investing so that when people are watching videos, that your story could be getting in front of them? Now is a good, I know it's a tough thing to say, we're trying to conserve cash, but there again, could be a good time to be investing your time and effort. Thinking about that, the third of my tips for you is it is a good time to revisit that good principle of encouraging user-generated content. So what we want to be doing is finding ways to incentivize our customers who love us, who are loyal to us, to be talking about us, to sharing our stories with their neighbors, their digital community, their social networks. So you might want to be thinking about and looking for examples on how we can get people to share our social content. And actually, the fourth of my tips, I don't have 5 for you, I'm sorry about that today, is you might want to be experimenting with new functionality. So again, as the digital space, it's accelerating, these changes are all happening. You might want to be thinking about experimenting with webinars. You might want to experiment with investing in a higher quality webcam. You might want to be thinking about competition applications. You might want to be thinking about polling software. But now could be a good time for you to be thinking about the kinds of new functionality and new changes that you can be using. Good. Well, that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour for you today, hasn't it? We've talked about so many different things in terms of the kind of voice that you might have. We might talk about different kinds of content. I think for me, one of the most important messages I'd like to ensure that you got is the concept of agile marketing, how you need to be changing your mindset and thinking about testing and thinking about coming to market more quickly. And I hope I've given you a few practical little tips as well. That takes us up. It's just been just about 40 minutes, so I'm pretty much exactly on time. I hope that you have found this to be a useful workshop. I don't know if any of you have any particular questions, but what I'm going to do is I will leave the webinar running. The question and answer session is open. I'm going to be staying online, but I will be stopping the recording. My name is Susan Hallam. It's been a huge pleasure delivering this workshop for you tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the workshop as much as I have. If anybody would like to add any questions in the chat, that would be absolutely marvelous. But I would like to say thank you, and I hope that you have found that webinar useful. My name is Susan Hallam from Hallam, and I'll look forward to running another webinar with you all again soon. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now. Thanks.